Hi, good morning, everyone. Okay. Good morning and welcome to, welcome to Midweek Reflections. And a very special welcome to Valerie. Vala, we'll keep referring you to it, who is going to lead the actual reflections for us today. It is lovely to see some of you who were here last time and one or two new faces. Gwenda, I haven't seen you for a very long time. And
That's
Pam.
I walked over by myself.
And Pam, for you to come back with us is very nice. You're very welcome.
Very special for me. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Living God, in this month of harvest, we bring our grateful thanks for the bountiful gifts that we enjoy from you. The beauty of nature, for fruit and vegetables from orchards and fields, varieties of meat and fish and grain, mostly our well-stocked larders, and the love of family and friends. Forgive us when we often take these for granted, and help us to remember those who have so much less. As we meet together now, sow the seed of your word in our hearts. May it find a place to grow despite all that competes for space in our lives. May shoots of faith be able to withstand the temptations and pressures that threaten to choke them. And may new growth be seen among us, leading to a rich harvest of life's won for you. In Christ's name we ask these. Amen. Now, Valerie.
First of all, Alan, your voice, you're very persuasive. And it's quite funny because I was on the bus in Wales a while ago with Jenny, and the announcements were coming across, and it said like, the next stop is Nantagama, the next stop is Bryn Gwent. And there was this very nice voice with a very English accent doing all the Welsh place names. And I said to Jenny, don't you think that sounds just like Alan Watson? And Jenny said, no, she said, it's not. Alan's the one at the Trafford Centre. He does. So your voice, Alan, very persuasive. Anyway. I'm going to read most of this, I'm sorry. For some reason, I chose to focus on gratitude. I think it was because at the time when Alan asked me, we'd been hearing such terrible stories about the people trying to escape from Kabul, the refugees. And at the same time, I'd had a couple of experiences, which I'll relate to you, which made me feel very thankful. The first was when we went to Barcelona to see our son and his family in June. We knew that the journey would be more difficult because of the pandemic, and in fact we wouldn't even have attempted the journey if it hadn't been that we wanted to see the family. We wouldn't have gone just for a holiday. And the outward trip went fine, there was no problem. And we had a nice week, and we didn't even notice really that anything was particularly different there, apart from the fact that we had to wear masks. We had a great time. And then it was time to think about coming home. So we organised our tests, and we took the tests, and we got the expected result of negative. We filled in the paperwork, and we turned up at the airport. We were so relaxed, we were practically horizontal. We didn't bother to rush to board because we had our numbered seats, and there was no point in rushing. We thought we might as well be among the last to get on the plane. However, as we got to the desk, it became clear that there was a sort of problem. In fact, there was a kerfuffle breaking out, and some passengers were not happy. And I soon realised that we too had a problem. The ground staff were asking for a QR code, and the unhappy passengers hadn't got one. And it dawned on me that we hadn't completely filled in the paperwork, and so we hadn't got one either. Most of it was okay, but we hadn't got the code, so I quickly went on the Wi-Fi with my phone and completed it and downloaded it. But even as I did that, the ground staff were saying, that's it, the gate's closed, no more boarding. And actually, we didn't get on the plane. Well, along with several other unhappy passengers, we were denied boarding and we were escorted out of the airport. And if you think about travelling by air, once you get through on your airside, you don't ever think what might happen if you have to come back again. But we discovered that it's not easy, and we were escorted out by the airport officials, and I think they probably felt very sorry for us, and we felt very sorry for ourselves. Thankfully, there was a very early morning flight the next morning to Stansted, and we were able to book on that, and this time we had the correct paperwork. But in that half hour of being in a kind of no man's land in the airport, it made me think how terrible it must be for refugees and asylum seekers who permanently have no documents, no paperwork, no code. We were in a civilized country amongst friendly people, and what must it be like for those who are in a hostile place? My gratitude at that time was very real. And then the second example happened actually on the day when Alan asked me if I would lead a midweek reflection. And as always, everything says, no, I've nothing to say. But Alan is very persuasive, so I always end up saying yes. So I'm thinking, what can the topic be? And then I had another experience of gratitude, again connected to our son. He's an engineer on a yacht, and he was about to come to the end of his 10-week period of rotation, and he would be home at any moment. And so we were expecting the usual messages that he sends, something like flight booked, home tomorrow, or even sometimes it says just walked in the door. However, we had nothing. There was silence, and it was very unusual, and we started to feel uneasy. And I sent the message in the end saying, when are you home? We keep expecting a message to pop up saying you're back. Eventually, a few hours later, back came the reply, not sure yet, probably next Saturday or Sunday. I've had to stay longer for getting Russian visas prepared. Oh dear. I messaged our daughter-in-law because I knew they were supposed to be going on holiday as soon as James got back. She replied, yes, it's very sad. It seems like I'm ending up going with the kids on our family holiday. Jim was supposed to be back today, but he won't be. Oh dear, the tale of woe. Well, we were very sorry that the family holiday had gone pear-shaped, but then we started to analyse the message. So the passports had been sent off to Russia for visas. James is in Monaco with no passport, and he lives in Spain, and he's no longer an EU citizen. Well, in 24 hours, Dave and I had wound one another up to quite an extent, and we just felt very helpless in the face of the machinations of the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin, and we were sure that they wouldn't release James's passport. So it's very easy to message him normally when he's on the boat, but the next morning I thought, well, I'll just send a simple message. Let us know when you know what's happening. Well, to cut a long story short, it transpired that, of course, the hold-up was nothing to do with Putin withholding a passport. It was simply because the other engineer, who was the replacement, was sorting his visa application, and it would need about 3 days. Whew, we were greatly relieved when we heard that he was in possession of his passport. But once again, it made us think of those poor Afghans trying to get out of Kabul and facing such huge hurdles before they could hope for any sort of normality in life. Again, it made us feel very humble and very thankful. And it seems that to feel gratitude, we almost have to experience having something taken away from us before we can realise how precious it is and how much we value it. I googled a quiz on gratitude, and I was surprised how many of the questions seemed to make out that in order to feel gratitude, we have to imagine the alternative possible scenario. So I came across questions like, when I see someone less fortunate than myself, I realise how lucky I am. Answer, strongly disagree, disagree, somewhat disagree, etc. And another one, I reflect on the worst times in my life to help me realise how fortunate I am now. Answer, never, once a year, few times a year, once a month, etc. I think of people who are less fortunate than I am to help me feel more satisfied with my circumstances, and the usual answers. And then one, which I thought was really questionable. When I drive by the scene of a car accident, it reminds me to feel thankful that I am safe. Strongly disagree, disagree, somewhat disagree. And so the quiz went on. Well, this sort of gratitude, which is attained only by comparing yourself to someone who's less fortunate, doesn't really seem compatible with the teaching of Jesus. This sort of Schadenfreude, as the Germans call it, taking pleasure in others' misfortunes. And so I went on to Google and to investigate Schadenfreude. And I found an article, which I'll read part of it to you. The person writes, I discovered that a study in Würzburg in Germany carried out in 2015 found that football fans smiled more quickly and broadly when their rival team missed a penalty than when their own team scored. To see others suffer does one good, wrote Nietzsche. This is a hard saying, but a mighty human, all too human principle. And so the writer, this is not me speaking, although I do identify with so much of it. When I pay attention to the pleasures I might feel in others' disasters, I'm struck by the variety of tastes and textures involved. There's a glee at incompetence, not just of skiers face-planting in the snow, but at screw-ups of implausible magnitude. When NASA lost a $125 million Mars orbiter because half the team were using imperial measurements and the other half metric. Then there's the self-righteous satisfaction I get when hypocrites are exposed, a politician who's caught breaking laws they expect others to observe. And the writer goes on to say, when my brother took his kids on a fabulous summer holiday to America, I felt bad because I never take my kids anywhere since it's too much expense, too much effort. And then I saw his Facebook status. It rained. Another feature of Schadenfreude is that we often feel entitled to it when the suffering can be construed as comeuppance, a deserved punishment for being smug or hypocritical or breaking the law. So we relish our moral superiority. The US pastor Tony Perkins said that floods were sent by God to punish abortion and gay marriage. And then his own house flooded and he had to escape in a canoe. And even the ever-impartial BBC enjoyed this story, posting aerial pictures of the flooded house next to his controversial "God is trying to send us a message" interview. And so I wrote this a while ago when Alan asked me about leading a midweek reflection. And then I left it because I wasn't very happy about the choice of subject. I couldn't see where it was going and how to tie it in. And then we had a meeting of the prayer chain. And I'm going to quote Kirsty now, because as we reviewed our list, Kirsty said of a young couple that we've been praying for a long time, and they're both suffering from an aggressive terminal cancer. Kirsty said, just to see photos of them pulls me up sharply and makes me realise how fortunate I am. And so I thought, well, if Kirsty thinks that, then it must be something that we could explore together. And the same day, the Manchester Evening News put a post on Facebook asking, what do you feel grateful for today? And so I went back to Christian gratitude. I couldn't quite see how there was a link between this Schadenfreude and the feeling of gratitude we might feel because of our Christian faith. And then one day I was out walking and something dawned on me that made things fall into place a bit more. Have I gone on too long, or can I share this with you? It's okay, okay. It was the death after a long time and after a long battle with cancer of a very dear friend, Margaret. And Margaret had been a close and special friend for 55 years. The two of us met on the first day we went up to study in 1966 at London University. I was to study German, and in the next bedroom to me in the hall of residence there was another Margaret, not the Margaret I'm talking about, but Margaret knew an Angela, and Angela had a bedroom next to the other Margaret. So there were two Margarets and an Angela and myself, and we formed a bond and we found our way round together, and we stayed friends. It is all a bit confusing, but anyway, daytime we went to lectures and seminars, and in the evening we worked our way through the reading lists and essays, but every evening we gathered in one of our bedrooms in our dressing gowns to drink cocoa and eat biscuits. And I mentioned this in a tribute actually at Margaret's funeral recently. I said it's a bit like Enid Blyton, only we weren't on Treasure Island, we were at Queen Mary College. And we actually gave ourselves a name. We called ourselves Spinsock because we were all spinsters. And I'm not sure how I qualified because I'd already met Dave, so I wasn't 100% committed. But anyway, it was fine. There were no recriminations, and our friendship developed. In our second year, we all shared a flat, and in our final year, was very clear to the person who managed the hall of residence that we were a firm group of friends, and so we were put in an annex, which was very enjoyable to occupy. When we'd finished at university, we went our separate ways, but we stayed in close contact and met up whenever we could. Work and family commitments meant we couldn't really even manage once a year. But, however, Margaret, the historian, was called into the church and she was ordained. And the vicarages that she and her husband occupied were usually plenty big enough to host a Spinsock get-together. When we all retired, things changed and we met up every year and went away together. And then just as we celebrated 50 years of friendship, Margaret was diagnosed with cancer, and this curtailed everything. Our annual meetups were in places the most accessible for her. She lived with her cancer with great strength, and when it got worse, she fought it bravely. And this year, our final Spinsock was in July, where the three of us stayed in a hotel just round the corner from where she lived. And although she was so poorly, we had a couple of meals out and we all met up for coffees and simple lunches at her house. In August, she died. Well, it's hard to imagine Spinsock without Margaret, and we all feel very bereft. And then there was the question of her funeral. And at first, the other two said that they weren't going. They didn't have a Christian faith and they didn't want to go. However, things changed, and at the end, they did come, and that was good. But I found their stances strange because Dave and I wouldn't have wanted to miss the funeral, even though we had to go down to Devon and we knew it would be upsetting. But I think that's because this is really the nub of Christian gratitude. Everything in this life is finite. It's on loan, and yet we have the conviction that the best is yet to be. And I know that Angela's and Margaret's stances in no way diminished their love for Margaret because they didn't share her faith. But she and I shared a faith which went beyond feeling upset at her funeral. I couldn't help feeling thankful that her suffering was over and she'd gone on to better things.
So thank you all very much for that. I know you've got a prayer coming for us shortly. But if I could just do a very short reading this morning. It's from Philippians chapter 4, and I'm starting to read at verse 4. I wish you joy in the Lord always. Again I say, all joy be yours. Be known to everyone for your consideration of others. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious, but in everything make your requests known to God in prayer and petition with thanksgiving. Then the peace of God, which is beyond all understanding, will guard your hearts and your thoughts in Christ Jesus. And now, my friends, all that is true, all that is noble, all that is just and pure, all that is lovable and attractive, whatever is excellent and admirable, fill your thoughts with these things. Put into practice the lessons I taught you, the tradition I have passed on, all that you have heard me say or saw me do, and the God of peace will be with you.
Shall we just say a short prayer? Loving God, grant us gratitude to unlock the fullness of life. May it turn what we have into enough. May we never forget to show our gratitude. We thank you for all the blessings which so often we take for granted. The regularity of day and night, the dependability of nature and of time and season. We thank you for memory, which enables us to build on the experiences of the past, and for imagination, which admits us into a larger world than we could otherwise know, and for foresight, by which we plan for the future. We thank you for your patience with us in our failings. We thank you for friends and family with whom we can celebrate our successes, and for those closest to us who give us their support in times of need. Bless those around us today and those who have gone before us in faith. We remember the helpless, the weak and the vulnerable, those caught up in a world of power struggles, and those for whom the future is bleak. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Amen.
Well, once again, my very grateful thanks to Valerie. I think that was very interesting, thought-provoking, and well done, Alan. I shall be back for the arm-twisting lessons shortly. This hopefully will be on the church website within the next few days, and our next meeting here in the church vestibule will be on Wednesday the 10th of November, and it will be led by David and Elsie Gilliland, and with an absolutely intriguing title. Am I allowed to say it? The Length of the Chancellor's Foot. So there you are. Well, thank you all so much for coming today. I hope you've enjoyed this short time of reflection with us. And we look forward to seeing you on again next month, second Wednesday of the month.